Hey guys, welcome back. We're finally out here after putting this foundation in. We had 45 yards of concrete that we poured. That was 5 concrete trucks. We finally got it all done. We've gotten the majority of these forms already stripped. Some of these boards we're gonna have to chip out because they're just a little bit encased, but we're not gonna let that hold us up. We're moving on right now to get these post collars set. This kit's supposed to be delivered here any day now. So we want to go ahead and get all of these set so that whenever those posts come in, we're already going to have to rent some equipment so that we can get them off their trailer. We'll go ahead and use the same equipment to go ahead and just set these posts right where they need to be. A couple days ago, I came out here with my dad. We pulled string lines, we got marks, we pulled out the LA 180 laser, and we were able to set our perfect line all the way down on each of these and get these post collars marked right where they need to be. It has rained a little bit since, but I think there's enough there that we can still see our chalk line good enough. And we of course marked with a marker right where the center of these post collars should be. Now, we did learn a couple things that thankfully our building did come out mostly square. Overall, we have a couple areas that are a little bit bigger than they should be, but we can really accommodate that. That's no big deal. We did also find a couple issues with this door jamb where you can see the post collar is not going to have enough room to really sit down on there good. Now, I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but according to R&R Buildings, on door frames, he usually just cuts that off and only puts one ear on a door jamb anyways. So I think what we're gonna do is we'll just cut this off right here, and then we'll just have 3 bolts on these. Now, since these are just interior walls, I don't think it's that big of a deal. A couple details about these post collars. These post collars are supposed to have 5/8 inch holes here, but after measuring them, they're actually 3/4 of an inch here because they CNC cut these and then they drilled these, and these are still right about 5/8, but these bump us up to a larger bolt size. If you guys haven't checked out R&R Buildings, they do a ton of these post frames. Great resource to know exactly how to put this stuff in. They use the Simpson Strong Tie HC bolt, which we're going to use also. We had to talk to our engineer. Our engineer typically recommends that we would just use a wedge anchor, but we're going to upgrade to these. These are a lot better. They don't want to push your concrete out. Those wedge anchors that the engineer typically specs for, you'd still just drill the same diameter hole, but it's going to want to go in and push out to grab onto this concrete, which of course, since we're close to the edge here, that gives us an opportunity to actually blow this portion of the concrete out. So these bolts, you drill your hole and then the ridges on this screw just lock into it, and it doesn't put any expansion force on the concrete. We have a couple different size bolts based on what size hole it is, but we're going to go ahead and drill that out and go ahead and start setting these. Since we've already put our mark on the concrete exactly where the center of this post base should be, all we have to do is find the middle of this post base, line it up, and then we should be good to set it. We're going to go ahead and drill and set this one first. That way we have a little bit of flexibility to lock this thing into place, and then we'll drill the bigger bolts on both sides after that. So I'm learning something here. So these holes, you're not supposed to have to blow out because you actually over drill them a little bit, maybe by about 1/2 inch, so that if there is any concrete dust, it'll fall down in there and it won't cause any problems. That works great with these 1/2 inch. But by the time we're getting up to these larger 5/8 inch, even though I'm over drilling these things, there's still a ton of dust that's getting down in there. Way too much to actually set them in here the way they're supposed to be. So what I'm doing is I'm blowing it out, and then I'm going to go ahead and just run that drill back and forth a few times just to clear out as much of that as we can. A lot of people will come with a little hose and blow that dust up. Like I said, we really shouldn't have to, so I think just clearing it out will make this go a lot easier. Then our bolts will be able to sink all the way down with no issues. Now that we know what the problem is, it's a pretty easy thing to deal with and to fix. So in a couple videos ago, you guys got on the comments and you asked a question. And guys, let me tell you, I love you asking me questions. In fact, I would appreciate it if you ask more questions. I love hearing from you guys, love getting to talk to you. But this question was about how are we paying for this? Because somebody else wants to do something similar. They were asking about financing. And let me tell you, I went down the rabbit hole of financing options for a barn dominion. And let me tell you, there's many options, a lot of great options. It all kind of pivots around how much square footage you want heated versus how much you just want as a shop. For us, a very small portion of this building is going to actually be heated living space. In fact, it's probably about 30% of our total square footage will be living. The minimum that I've found is a 50-50 split between heated living space and shop space. So right then and there, if you're going to be less than 50% living space, your options for financing are very small. Now, if you're up to 60% heated living space, you can get a traditional loan. Not really that much fancy about it. Look around, you can find people. They don't have to be in your state, they don't have to be your local bank, but you can very easily find financing if you're at 60% or more for heated living space. Now, for us in particular, because we wanted to be at about 30%, and maybe you do also, we're trying to figure out how could we finance this. So part of our goal with all of this is we want to get out of debt completely. So our number one goal here is to use as little financing as possible. Now, how far are we going to get before we have to dig into financing? I don't know. We'll figure that out. We're already way over budget, so it's probably going to happen at some point. But as we go through here, we're able to make decisions with that in mind. Since we're paying for the majority of this out of pocket, or at least we have so far, we're going to make decisions so that we put the money in where it's really important to us to get us in this barn. And then we'll come back and finish other things. So we might only do part of the interior slab. We might not do a full driveway all the way up to the road, all nice and wide quite yet. we're trying to spend the money that we need to get in until we can get out of our current house. Now that brings me to the second part of financing. For us, before we broke ground or anything, we went ahead and we opened a home equity line of credit. In fact, we have a home equity line of credit that we could probably pay for every bit of this barn build if we needed to. So we're not going to get to a point where we get 6 months down the road and we run out of funds completely. No, if we run out of cash and investments, we absolutely have a home equity that we can tap into. Now, hey, we don't want to because they're not cheap. No financing's cheap, especially right now. But that is an option. They don't have to agree with the square footage. It is our money that we've tapped into out of our home, and we can build whatever we want out here, and they don't know, they don't care, nothing. Which also makes it easier because we don't have a bank staring down our throat asking us when we're getting to certain milestones. So it makes the building process easier too. So we'll see how far we go. We'll tap into that when we need to. But listen, I really appreciate the question. If you have more questions about the financing or anything else that we're doing out here, leave them in the comment section. We'll be happy to answer them, and we'll put them in the next video. Well, back for another day here. Finally got the last 3 of these post collars painted up. We got into a little bit of cold weather and a little bit of wet weather, and so it took quite a while to get these things finished painting. Unfortunately, when we get the trusses in, we're gonna have to paint those also, but I think these turned out okay, so we'll get the last of these laid out, and then we'll get into setting some more of these bolts. So our engineer technically called for 1/2 inch by 4 inch bolts for these Simpson strong ties. Because the way the manufacturer drilled these holes and these post collars, we actually have to go up a size. The specs on these things are just 1/16 of an inch out of spec to run the 1/2 inch bolts on these post collars. So we got these 5/8 inch, which these things are way beefier, and ultimately we're going to be really happy that we have these heavier duty bolts in those concrete. But the problem is these are really hard to get. They have been all special ordered through Lowe's. It took me multiple orders to get as many as we need. I've already drilled pretty much all of the holes because I just couldn't stand to wait anymore, had to get something moving. So now, thankfully, we can really just come back and start setting these bolts and just run all of these in. After we get all these bolts in, really, we only have about 3 more post collars that we kind of have to figure out where it needs to go. Some of my lines on the corners kind of rubbed off in the rain. So we'll get these bolted down, and then we'll come back and deal with the corners. Now, this is the new STS Max that I got. I say new, but it's definitely used. I got it off of eBay for a pretty good price, though it does kind of smell like weed, but hey, it'll air out hopefully. One of the big concerns that I had about getting a battery operated STS is how long is it going to run, and am I going to have to be constantly changing batteries? Now, these 5/8 inch holes really take its toll on the battery. I've gotten up to 19 holes, 6 inches deep, 5/8 inch diameter with one of these 8 amp hour batteries. So I think it's pretty fair. I've also done some chipping and it seems to do all right also. But one question that I haven't gotten the answer to yet, just because I haven't really paid attention, is how long does it take to actually drill one of these 5/8 inch holes? The 1/2 inches are a little quicker, and we might even measure that one here in a bit too. So let's start a timer and see exactly how long this takes to drill a 6-inch hole. That was just right under 1 minute. So not too bad. This bit is a little bit used. We probably drilled about 60 or 70 holes so far, but I think it's still gonna do fine to finish this job. Now that we have this bracket where we think we want it, let's go ahead and drill these 1/2-inch holes. We'll compare that to our drill time against the 5/8" holes. I think it's gonna be a big difference, but I've never measured it. "25 seconds, more than half as fast as the 5/8" holes. Now on this post bracket, since I'm not 100% sure it's in the perfect spot, I'm only putting 2 bolts in it for now. We'll come back later after we get the post set, and we can finish bolting these down once we're 100% happy with this location. We're gonna do something similar in the back corner now, where I've lost all my lines. We're gonna measure off of these things. We're gonna set it as close as we can, but we're definitely not gonna run all the bolts, just in case we need to move it later. We still have the flexibility to do that. Okay, so we've moved to the back now. We have to figure out where this last set of post collars go. All 3 of these across the back don't have any marks. Now, luckily I did put 1 mark right here for this one. It's 1 little Sharpie mark that I can still see. So this will be the basis for everything that we're gonna do. So this one and the last one I just measured are pretty much spot on, and they are coming out to the measurements that I originally had designed to go here. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and set these 2, and then what we'll do is we'll pull a string line and we'll just make sure the last one's aligned. Even if our measurements show a little bit off, we'll have more than enough room to account for an 1/8 inch or 3/16 as we get around to setting these posts. Well, it's been another couple days, and at the very end, right as I was about to start drilling these holes, I got a call from work, and it took me off of this, had to pack it up and head straight on out as soon as I got the call. I've been out here for about another hour. We've pulled our laser out. I don't know if you can see it. I got it set up down there in the corner, and I just can't figure out exactly where this post needs to go. And I think that's okay. So instead of drilling a hole and messing something up, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna leave it. We're gonna go in a couple days to pick up our 16 8x8x20 posts that we're gonna start setting in these post collars. And once we get these set, we can pull really good straight lines all the way down. And this back row, we can figure it out once we get to that point. So that'll be what's coming next. After that, we have trusses and roof to figure out. So guys, I appreciate it. If you've enjoyed this, if you want to follow along, this is the 100-year-old barn build on our 32-acre property that we're doing all by ourselves. Hit the subscribe button. We appreciate it. Thanks guys for working with us, and we'll see you in the next one.